Hello and welcome everyone. I put up a community post asking what topics people struggled with in Fate Grand Order, what they could stand to learn more about. I got a response about command codes, so in this video we're going to go over command codes and talk about what they are and some strategies on how to use them. So let's go ahead and begin the video. To get to the command codes, we're going to first from the main menu go to the menu, go to Enhance. Then we're going to scroll down just a bit to the command code option. From here, we are able to select a servant, which I'll go ahead and do, just to give you an example. So I've selected a servant here whom I have not opened up any of his cards. Every servant has 5 cards, as we know, and each one has to be opened individually. When I say open, what I mean is you can tap on the card, you'll be prompted to use up one of your command card openers, or code openers rather, which you have a rather limited supply of if you're like most players. You don't get a ton of these. You can buy them once a month from the Da Vinci shop, you can get them from events or some other places, but you don't get an excessively large amount of these. So you want to be a little bit careful in how you use them, and which servants you're using them on, which cards you're using them on. So in that regard, it's probably not a good idea to do this from this menu. You would probably actually want to go to the, like My Room, and then go to your command code list from there, so that you could preview them all before you actually have to open a card and use it. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. It's also going to run you 1 million QP for each card that you open. So every servant is going to run you a couple of these code openers for each colored card that they have, as well as 5 million total QP if you want to open all 5 of their cards. So we'll go ahead and open one of these. We'll be prompted to use it, the code opener, that is, and also to spend the 1 million QP. We open the card, and now we can place a command code of our choice on that card specifically. In battle, when we get that card specifically and we use it, the effect that is attached to it via the command code will be used in the battle. So I'll give you an example. We hit tap here, and then we can see the list of our command codes. We can tap any of them to get the preview of what the code actually does up here. And we have a variety of options. I will say you have probably a bunch of these 1 and 2 star command codes. These are almost all just about useless. The effects on them are just really weak. 5% special attack damage against divine enemies, 5% special attack damage against undead enemies, against human enemies. 5% is just not really going to make or break your battle most of the time. Extra 100 HP is, remove 1 poison, curse, or burn status effect from yourself. These are just, they're very weak. The effects that they give are not strong at all. I would generally say that the cost to use a command code in the form of the code opener and the million QP, you want to get the most bang for your buck out of the command code that you apply to a card. Because the price to just open up a card or a full servant's set of cards is not insubstantial. So you don't want to use up one of your 15 Buster card openers and spend 1 million QP and then get a situational 5% damage bonus. So instead, you want to mostly look at your 3-star and above command codes. Some of the 3-star codes, are not bad. Their effects aren't usually super strong, but I'll show you some examples a little bit later of some servants who can really take advantage of them, and you, in fact, already have a preview here on the screen. Excuse me. So in this case, since we're working on Old Man Lee, I don't know that any of these are fitting super well with his gameplay, so that's fine. If you decide, hey, I don't really have a command code for this servant, that's totally okay. Just back out, tap on the card again, and you'll see this button here that says Erase Slot. What this will do, if there's a command code equipped, it'll take it off. You'll use up one of these code removers, which again are not in massive supply, so be kind of careful, but you can use these. This will give you back the card opener that you used, or the code opener, rather. It won't refund your QP, but it'll seal the card back up. I'll get that code opener back, go back to 19 instead of 18, and now I can use that on somebody else who I have a better command code for. So now that we've talked about what the command code is and the basics of how they kind of function, let's talk about how to choose a good command code for a given servant. This is one possible use for them, is to enable aspects of their gameplay that are otherwise more situational. Robin Hood, if you're not aware, gets a massive damage bonus on his Noble Phantasm if it's used against an enemy who has a poison status afflicted against them. Now he does, in his skill set, have a way to inflict poison against enemies. However, your debuff might get resisted, it might be on cooldown when you need it. There's any number of reasons why that isn't always necessarily super reliable. So what you can do is you can put some command codes on him that let him poison enemies with his regular cards. So you can see I've got both of these set on him, that every time he uses either of his arts cards, which as an arts servant who is normally deployed in kind of arts teams, should be pretty often, he'll poison the enemies, and then if he can land his Noble Phantasm on those enemies while that poison is still applied, he'll get a big damage bonus against them. If I am able to get through the battle just with the skill and the poison effect that it grants, that's awesome. This just gives me another way to more reliably poison enemies. And there's a handful of servants who kind of work this way. You've got Arjuna Alter off the top of my head, who gets a damage bonus against any enemy who has a debuff applied to them. You have Yu here, who gets a damage bonus against burned enemies. So I've got these two on her arts card that will inflict burn on the enemies that I can use before her Noble Phantasm to give her that damage bonus. Normally she has to use her NP, which burns the enemy, and then use it again rapidly thereafter to try to take advantage of the bonus damage. But with these I can just use an art card before the NP, a turn before the NP, or in the card slot directly before the NP, something like that. Get that burn applied, and then reap the rewards of the special attack damage bonus. I also have this one, which increases her crit strength against burned enemies, because again, between two arts cards and her Noble Phantasm, when I'm using her, enemies are often burned, so she can use this to occasionally land a stronger crit. On that note, this command code right here is a great example of kind of the secret behind command codes. If you look at it, you'll notice that's actually UU there on the code itself. If there's a servant or like a servant's item on the code, that's usually kind of a hint about who it would probably be good on. That's not to say that those are the only servants that you can use them on. But you can see here, this one for example has Murasaki Shikabu on it. It applies special attack against demonic enemies. Well, if you know her Noble Phantasm and her skills, she performs best against demonic enemies. She gets bonus damage against demonic enemies. So you can take that effect that's normally only applied on her Noble Phantasm and apply it to one of her regular cards as well. You could use this on any servant who's going to regularly be fighting demonic enemies, but since that's already a strength of this servant, then it's really good to put it on her, because she's going to get the benefit way more often, if that makes sense. But again, that's not the only way to do it. You can see this command code has Enkidu on it. It applies special attack against divine enemies, and I actually have it equipped to Skahawk. I use her more often when I have to fight divine enemies. Skahak would be my kind of regular go-to, rather than Enkidu. So I have that one, and I think at least one other, that is like an anti-divine damage bonus on that card for Skahak. However, I do have this one on Enkidu, which increases the card's critical strength against divine enemies. Enkidu, in the way that I use him, crits a lot more often than Skahak does. Skahak I mostly use to just one-shot things with her Noble Phantasm. Enkidu is often in much longer, more drawn-out battles. He has an extra quick card. He uses those quick cards a lot more often than Skahak does. His quick cards are a lot better at generating stars, so he isn't, in the way that I use him in actual gameplay, he has a lot more opportunities in a given battle to crit against enemies. As a result, this one wouldn't make a tremendous amount of sense for me on Skahak, but it does on Enkidu. So that's kind of the larger point here, is that it's a good idea to imagine how you're actually going to use the servant, or analyze how you do actually use the servant in practice, and then base your command code decisions off of that. Let me give you another example. This is a command code that again has Kiara Sesuin on it, and I used it on her because it makes a lot of sense for her. It applies special attack against lawful and ruler enemies. So you could also use that on like an Avenger if you wanted to, because they're going to be fighting rulers probably the most often out of anybody. Kiara already gets a bonus damage against ruler enemies. She also gets a bonus damage against lawful enemies, so her kit is already well situated to take advantage of both aspects of this command code. So why is it on her arts card? Because it just adds damage, so maybe I should probably put it on a Buster card, right? Well, I have it on her arts card because I use her in arts teams, and anytime that I'm really using her, I'm trying to land a lot of arts chains. It's very rare that I would have a situation where I would choose her Buster card over her arts card if I had to pick one or the other. So I put this one on her arts card because even though it's a damaging effect and therefore maybe in theory might be better suited to her Buster card, in practice I'm going to use this arts card a lot more often than her Buster cards, so I'll get more mileage out of it, if that makes sense, because I'll just play this card a lot more often than I will her Buster cards. Here's another example of just a really simple kind of setup for a servant. Gil is a servant who I use quite a bit. He's a servant who, in the way that I use him, is often positioned as like the DPS in a crit team, if he's not just wiping out waves with his Noble Phantasm. So what I've done here is I've just given him command codes that increase his his critical strength, his critical damage, and the 4 cards on the right hand side, his arts cards and the Buster cards, all have command codes that are just going to improve his critical damage with those cards. He's an archer, so he absorbs a lot of stars. He also makes a lot of stars with his quick card, which I've actually enhanced with a command code that increases the crit star drop rate by 30% of the card that it's attached to. So I can use this card to generate a lot of stars. As an archer, Gil absorbs all those stars, and then all of his other cards have crit damage bonuses attached to them. Here's another servant that I have set up very similarly. This is Lancelot Saber. Again, he's a servant who, his gameplay heavily relies on him critting a lot and doing really big damage with his crits. So I've got these 3 very similar command codes that improve the critical strength of 20% of the card they're attached to by 20% if they're attached to the right color. So this one only works on a Buster card, hence it's attached to his Buster card. This one only works if it's attached to an arts card, hence it's attached to his arts card, and similarly for the quick card. Most of the servants that I've showcased thus far are kind of damage-dealing servants, and I do think generally most command codes are best suited towards damage dealers, at least most of the ones that I happen to have. However, there are some command codes that have more supportive effects and are better on kind of support servants. So this is Jeanne d'Arc. I use her most of the time in slow arts stall teams where I'm trying to just outlast an enemy for 50 turns or something like that, in a challenge quest context or something. So what I have on her are command codes that heal herself as well as her allies. And there's a couple more of these that I could attach to her other cards as well that would even further improve her kind of supportive capabilities. So in this way, I'm again emphasizing the strength of the servants, and I'm imagining how I'm going to be using them, and just trying to use these command codes to smooth out that process or to enhance the things that I'm already doing with them. So for example, let's find something else to put on Jeanne's quick card. We'll go ahead and unlock it. Tap the card again, go into here. Just like with craft essences, there's this filter setting where you can sort by rarity or apply only certain effects and see all the command codes that have those effects but not others. So again, we want her to be tanky and to survive for a long time, and maybe to help other allies survive for a long time as well. So we'll look at HP recovery effects. There's this one over here on the left that increases crit star gather rate by 100% for the engraved card. That would be a little bit of a waste on Jeanne. I would rather those stars go to like my damage dealer in the kind of team that she's usually going to be in. So maybe not that one, although the recover 100 HP for all allies is a strong effect. That's an AoE heal for your entire party. But we'll keep looking. Recover HP by 100 and gain a crit star. Okay. Remove crit strength up state for one enemy and recover 100 HP for yourself. That's pretty good. Remove critical rate up state for one enemy when attacking and recover 100 HP for yourself. Very similar. Remove a damage over time effect and recover 100 HP. Remove an attack up buff on a single enemy and recover HP. Or just recover 200 HP. So any of those could kind of work. As I'm imagining it right now, when I'm in these like long battles against enemies with tons and tons of HP and I'm trying to just stall them out, generally I'm worried about how much damage they can deal. So maybe kind of like this one would be good, in that this would allow her to limit the enemy's strength if they have any attack up buffs equipped, while also healing herself a little bit. So we'll go with that one. So we select it, and then we come back to here, we hit engrave, and it goes on, and now next time I use her in battle and use her quick card, that effect will take place. As my last example, I'm going to show you a servant that I have fully coded out. I've got codes on all 5 of her cards. This is one of my favorite servants. This is Kagatora. On her buster cards, I have effects that just help her deal more damage. This one just gives a flat 1000 extra damage to her buster card. This one gives 20% special attack damage against any servant enemies. Again, that's one that you could use on just about anybody who you're regularly using as a boss fighter. For me, classes being kind of neutral, Kagatora is my go-to for that sort of thing a lot of the time. Against archers, against berserkers. She fights a lot of servants for me. So, I have that on her. Both of her arts cards have very similar codes. Both of these increase the crit star gather rate of the card that it's engraved onto. This is because, again, she's an arts servant. I use her in a bunch of arts teams. She's a servant who likes to crit with her skills, having crit star gather rate, as well as crit generation, as well as crit strength. So she can already make some stars, pull those stars to herself, do good damage with those crits, and these just help her to do that on her arts card specifically, which helps her quickly charge up her Noble Phantasm. And then her quick card just gives me a flat 4 stars every time that I use it. It's already a decent quick card. This helps me generate a few extra stars every time I happen to use her quick card, which is not especially often most of the time for her, but it's nice when it's there. So this is a setup of command codes that kind of takes into account the strengths of each card, and the quick card has crit star generation abilities. The arts cards are set up to crit more regularly, which helps her produce more NP meter, and then the buster cards are set up to just help her deal more damage with those cards. So we're taking it into account the strengths of the cards the codes are going on to, and also taking into account how we're tending to use the servant in actual gameplay. Like when I use Kagatora, why am I using her? The reasons are, you know, similar to why I've chosen those specific codes for her. So that is some of my command-coded servants. That's some of the reasonings on how I got there. That's some of my philosophies about why I chose the codes that I chose onto the cards that I chose and onto the servants. Again, the materials for opening up codes, for erasing codes, these kinds of things, they're not super rare, but they're not excessively common either. So you want to have a little bit of a game plan before you go using one. So I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but if you go to my room, go to material, go to Spirit Origin List, and then hit command code, you can see a list of all of your command codes. You can click on any of them to see what their effects would be, and in this way you don't have to use up code openers and code closers to preview the effects. You can decide, oh, I'm going to use this one on whoever, based on its effects. So that's kind of how it all goes, and that's just about what I have to say about command codes. And thus, that'll just about do it for this video. In the description below, there's going to be a couple things for you. There's going to be this number that you can see right here on the screen. That's my follow code. You can type it in under the friends menu. Send me a follow request. It's not a request, you just follow me, which allows you to use this support list or any of the support lists that I happen to have set during Part 1 story quests, as well as of very recently, Part 2 story quests up to a certain point. I forget if that's before, if the cutoff point is Olympus or Atlantis, but anyways, you'll be able to use some of my servants to help you out in your various trials and tribulations as you're going through the main story. There's also going to be my Discord username. You can reach out to me, send me a message if you have any questions that you'd like to discuss there. I'm always happy to help out however I can, offer any word of advice on anything that is giving you some trouble. So get in touch if you have any questions, or leave them in the YouTube comments below. I'm always happy to answer those as well. Send me a follow if you like, and go put some command codes on your servants, man. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.